The strategy that first built your first success is probably going to block your next one. Hi, welcome to Unearth with Shelly Hughes. I'm Shelly Hughes. In this podcast, we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of building a profitable, passionate brand. We talk about the wins and mistakes and, of course, lessons learned about, what it means to build an amazing business. Today, we're talking about expanding into new markets and what a lot of CEOs and business leaders miss when they're thinking about expanding into new markets. So this could be geographic markets. This could be new audiences. It could be new products, right? So we always, in the last episode, in episode 37, we talked about scaling. And so if you want to scale, something has to change. So it's this crazy balance as entrepreneurs. You want to niche down, you want to focus, you want to niche. And then you have this, and I don't know if it's right for you, your business or not, but you have this urge to then expand. And the timing of that, the art and science that goes behind the timing of niching down and expansion is something that honestly I haven't quite figured out. And I don't know if a lot of people on this earth have. But if you are looking to expand, I want to go over some things from a marketing and branding perspective that a lot of CEOs miss, and something that I see a lot come to us, mainly for those fractional CMO services, because they want to expand or they want to break into this new market, but they haven't been having a lot of success if they already tried it, or they know that they're missing something from a messaging standpoint. So let's talk about what breaks when you move into new markets, right? When things break, if a CEO wants to move into a market and something breaks or something doesn't go well, many CEOs, I realize, think of it as a capacity issue and not a clarity issue. They assume what worked before will probably work again. But the problem is, with a new market, there's new values, there's new audiences, there's new perspectives, there's new people value things differently than in the market before, whether that's geographic or otherwise. And it really, this new expansion, it's not a bad business idea. It's just there's a mismatch between the messaging and really the product. So many times, there has to be a shift in your brand promise, your brand voice, the channels that you use. It can't stay static. Your voice can't stay static because, again, the values of who you're selling to are going to be changing. And we can't think of this as like B2B or we're changing geography. We are still selling to people, whether you want to call yourself a B2B company or not. And so we always have to think about, what do the person who's going to buy from me, either the gatekeeper or the decision maker and everyone in between, what do they care about in a partner? And every audience, culturally, geographically, even different types of industries, they respond emotionally in different ways. So you really have to, and they have different emotional cues. So you really have to pinpoint what those are when you're moving into a new market. And here's the thing, a channel that worked for one thing might not work for another. So for example, when Ivy Rehab was a client of ours, and before COVID, they really pushed their referral systems. They really pushed their referral sources. So they would have their new business people go and shake hands with physicians. They would drop off cookies and food and really try to make that, deep connection with them. Not even deep. It was honestly pretty shallow, but make a connection with them nonetheless. When COVID hit, all of a sudden they were forced into a new market. They were forced to change their platform. So something we did for Ivy Rehab, and specifically some of the more regional spots, we launched a podcast that kind of brought in physicians as thought leaders on the podcast. So number one, there was tons of content going out that didn't go out before. So that helped. Number two, you kind of struck the ego of the physicians that you want to be your referral partners. Because we were like, hey, we want you to be on the podcast. They've probably never been on a podcast before, right? So they're kind of feeling good. Third, it actually, in a time of COVID where no one was going in person, it was an excuse to get them in person. It was an excuse to get them to see the clinics, because the clinics were so unique and so interesting that it kind of really, it was a very easy sell after that. So before COVID, what was working, but after COVID, they had to completely change, and they were forced into this new market, which, is just a perfect example of what we're talking about today. The other thing that they did was a shift to direct to athlete stuff, but that's something we can get into a different time. So let's talk about some different ways that you can change your market or go to a different market. One, obviously, is geographic expansion. So maybe you're a Chicago-based company and you have a lot of clients in that area and you want to expand to like New York and the East Coast. That's a geographic expansion. But that's just on a new zip code that you're targeting your Google ads or your meta ads on. It's a new cultural context. What resonates in Chicago might feel kind of off in, North Carolina or Texas or something like that. So you have to really think about that. So, and what CEOs miss in this perspective is that assuming that the brand voice, the positioning, the value, even social proof, even little words or lingo, might have different context in a different geographical position. And you can't just assume that all of that will translate and adapt. Second way you can get into a new market is a new audience segment. This is a really popular one. A firm, maybe you're a law firm and you really were only focusing on, workers' comp or something like that. And you want to get into a new audience segment. The pitch deck, the language, even the services really have to shift because you need to support someone that has a very different problem than the audience that you were serving before. And so thinking about your current testimonials or tone of voice, make sure it appeals to everyone and kind of that similar, make sure you find the similar line between all of them. You might have a product offer. So maybe a service-based business launches a digital course or a template shop. It's not just a new revenue stream. And that's, people are always like, oh, passive revenue, passive, income, just create a course and people will come. But it's a completely different buyer journey. It's probably a lower ticket item. So you're kind of going after the maybe not as sophisticated person. And that's okay because you can think of it as kind of top of funnel. So if you're kind of launching a digital course, and I'm not saying that a lot of people do it successfully, right? But figure out what you want the bottom of that funnel to be. Is this because it will be a new audience. And do you want to go after that audience because they're kind of going to stay in as they are? Or are you using this course or shop template to bring in a slightly under sophisticated audience to then nurture them through and then have them be a client at the end, right? So just different things to think about because it is a completely different buyer journey than what you've done before. So underestimating the marketing funnel needed to sell low ticket at scale is something that a lot of CEOs miss. Also might be a new channel. There's a ton of different ways you can get into a new market. Finding your new market message is going to be key. And I think of it as this 3-part Venn diagram. I've said this before. It's a 3-part Venn diagram and you have this new audience, right? The new audience has to be defined. It has to be understood. You have to understand their values. You have to understand where are they? What are the problems that they're facing? What are their fears? What are their desires? And you have to think about as one of the circles in this 3-part Venn diagram is, what is the leader's values? Because that's going to be really important. Second circle is what are the brand's values? And then you have to understand what is the audience's values? And you've redefined that, right? Because it's this new audience, it's new people. And the overlap is going to be your unique value proposition for this specific market. If you just focus on the brand's values and the audience's values, you ignore the fire of the company that is making everything work, which is the leader, right? Same thing if you just focus on the leader's values and the brand's values, you completely ignore, really what your buyer is interested in. So you're not just translating your old message, you're kind of the architect of the new one. So some things to watch for, some red flags that I just noted down that I want to go through. Don't assume you can plug market A's strategy into market B. You have to go deep into those psychographics to understand the value system of this new market. If you're saying like, it's not working and I don't know why, really think about the emotional drivers of buying in this new market. And you might really just have to think, how are you going to market and how are you positioning yourself as important and needed. You know this, people buy from emotion. They don't buy from logic. So really going into the psychographics are going to be important. And to the founder that just doesn't want to change, it's okay. I get it. Change is really hard. Some founders say, let's just run the same playbook. I've heard that before. Even when clients come to us and say, hey, we need your help, but we want to run the same playbook because it works. Cool. That's fine. A lot of times I'll say, I'll see you in 3 months when it doesn't work, or I'll see you in 6 months when it doesn't work. Or if you're really stubborn, I'll see you next year when it doesn't work, because really the same playbook is not going to work for different markets. Most likely something is going to have to change. I don't waste my time with people who are convinced on something and they're really not ready. It's okay. It's my job to challenge people, not force people's hand. So final takeaway with this one, your next audience is not a clone of your current one or your last one. You really have to ensure you dive deep into those psychographics to understand why they buy, what are the emotional drivers, what are the cultural differences, and if it's a new product, right, what is the unique value proposition of this product? And you can't just compare that to the similar product down the street. You have to think about what is a similar product across the globe, and are they doing something interesting that's going to put you out of business, this new product out of business? So you have to really think about a little bit bigger, and every new level of growth requires this new level of clarity. And it's when you find the clarity, you realize everything's going to work out. Thank you for listening to this episode. I appreciate it. If you like this episode, please hit the follow button. A lot of people aren't following. That's cool, but it's really helping us understand what's resonating, what's not, what kind of content to do more of. Also send this to a friend that you think it would help, and I'll see you next week.